Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening, wherever you may be. It's good afternoon where I am. My name is Larry Weiberg. I'm a franchise lawyer in Toronto, Canada, and I'm also chair of the IFA's International Committee. Joining me is our vice chair, Kay Ainsley. Give a wave, Kay. Hello. Who's a franchise consultant based in Atlanta, Georgia. And we have the pleasure and honor of hosting you today on what is the second or third webinar being hosted by the International Committee of the IFA. We have dedicated some of our resources and time to starting this series of webinars to better educate franchisors in the US and throughout the world really on international franchising. And today is no different. It'll be an excellent program, I guarantee you. Our speaker today is Eric Johnson, who is with the U.S. Commercial Service. He'll explain better, but it is a group under the auspices of the U.S. Department of Commerce who help franchisors in the United States expand to other countries in the world. I've explained to Eric many times that as I said, I'm from Canada, where we don't have anything like the U.S. Commercial Service, and how jealous I am of his program and his work in the field. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the webinar. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Larry. It's honestly my pleasure to join the group today, and anytime I get the opportunity to address membership or guests of the International Franchise Association, that's a great result. It's something that I very much love speaking about franchising and bringing people into our greater fold of people that we work with and know and engage. I'm looking forward to sharing a lot more about our organization and the resources that we do provide. And as Larry mentioned, I do head our franchise industry team. I'm actually located in Atlanta, Georgia, and work in our U.S. Export Assistance Center. I actually manage our franchise practice with approximately 125 people on my team, both domestically and around the world. And we provide events and services to enable franchise brand owners to connect with prospective candidates. That's the most important thing that we do. For those of you who do not know about our team service, I hope that you'll leave today with knowledge, tips, and connection points that will make an impact for what you have planned for 2024. Next slide, please. Perfect. So let's begin about talking about who we are and what do we do at U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service. So we are part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are housed within the International Trade Administration's division, and this means that we are the federal government's economic development engine. We are currently, to my knowledge, the only government team in the world that maintains a division dedicated solely to the franchise industry. I know that both my team and I are very proud of that distinction. We work diligently to maintain a certain level of expertise that the U.S. franchise community and those who engage in franchising around the world can actually benefit from. You can expect that when you connect with our team, that our members anywhere in the world actually understand the language of franchising. And you can actually engage on a much deeper level when you reach out to our embassies and consulate generals. Our team's core mission is to work with franchisors seeking to expand their brands across the globe. We work with franchisors to understand new markets where they have white space for development, and to identify and introduce prospective candidates that are appropriate either for master franchise contracts or area development deals. A franchisor's goals to open new markets aligns with our organization's goals, meaning when a franchisor succeeds by signing a new contract and bringing on board a new partner, we succeed because we are actually delivering metrics in our organization. And all of our teams have metrics that they must maintain in order to stay relevant and to actually obtain budget for that next financial year that we will operate. Now, our team is actually based both in our domestic offices through the U.S. Export Assistance Centers, and importantly, as I mentioned before, in the U.S. embassies and consulate generals around the world. And we do operate in 85 countries. Our team members are actually very adept at understanding the needs of the franchise development executive and teams. And I can also tell you that, importantly, we've just completed and developed a 2.5-month or 2.5-month long 5-part professional development training series that our global staff have been able to attend. It's given them the opportunity to gain new skills and expand the ways that they actually think about the franchising industry. We focused on a deeper understanding of expansion methods, including licensing. We've taken a deeper dive into franchise practices. We've focused on crisis management. We've looked at monetization of intellectual property, and we've also focused more on how can our offices impact those brands that are looking to bring greater success with their value propositions, engaging franchisees on a much greater level around the world. I'd like to say thank you to MSA Worldwide, and in particular, Kay Ainsley, who was very instrumental in bringing that training to our organization. Kay was a wonderful facilitator. And as well, we also worked with a number of other speakers from the International Franchise Association community, including Jair Para with Fat Brands, Tony Padullo with School of Rock, and a number of other speakers. And without their case studies and contributions, our team wouldn't have the same level of engagement. Let's move on to the next slide. So I just mentioned our staff globally, and I'm going to continue by mentioning that many of our employees come to work with our organization after careers in other government agency work or even the private sector. They've all passed in-depth background and security checks, and they actually have your franchise organization's best interest in mind. I think the value add that we bring to the franchise industry is our global coverage. And I'll mention again that we do have our U.S. and foreign commercial service staff in 85 countries today. We've just opened our offices in Bangladesh and Zambia, and I think that there will be more U.S. and foreign commercial service offices that do open in the new year. You can see many of those locations listed here on this slide. And importantly, where we don't actually have our U.S. and foreign commercial service staff, we do partner with the U.S. Department of State, and we work with the local commercial and economic attaches to provide that level of expertise and coverage on the ground. We do not operate in a number of markets, and I don't think anyone will be surprised to hear that we're not able to support you with assistance in Cuba, Iran, Syria, North Korea. I think things in Venezuela might be changing slightly, and of course, Russia is also currently problematic. Importantly, though, what you will see here is that we have at times also worked with multilateral development banks. We also do a great deal of work with the Commercial Law Development Program. And CLDP, or that Commercial Law Development Program, is a division of our Department of Commerce, and they engage in markets that are typically post-conflict or developing nations. And their focus is to bring improvements on business transparency and as well intellectual property rights. Over the last 5 years, I've done a great deal of work with their division in markets like Ghana, Iraq, Armenia, Georgia, and as well even in the Ukraine. Our efforts there, of course, did actually need to stop given current geopolitical issues playing out on the global scene. Included here is a website, trade.gov. You can always get an updated list of where our offices are located there and much more information. Next slide, please. So you're likely asking at this point, so what does the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service do? Essentially, we give U.S. franchisors access to our ecosystems of contacts and markets all over the world. We help franchisors connect with prospective candidates and industry contacts that may become important parts of your brand families in the future. As we open doors in communication through the United States Embassy moniker, this brings great cachet that enables you to engage with government and business leaders that can be more difficult to actually open without this level of entree. Annually, we do work with companies in many industry verticals, and we literally identify, impact, and influence deals that are worth billions of dollars. And we do this through a variety of both free and paid services. We're going to talk about those services in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk about what we do to engage in the franchising space. So next slide, please. So we engage in the franchise space because franchises' gross domestic product contribution represents 3% of the overall U.S. economy. And the total measure of franchises businesses output in the U.S. is expected at $860.1 billion in 2023. So franchising makes an impact on economic development locally and globally. It brings jobs, training, infrastructure, and improvements in supply chain and product innovations to brand value propositions. Franchising in its own way also impacts what the rest of the world thinks about the United States. It also helps bring economic growth and democratic principles around the world. Franchising was developed in the United States. Some of the earliest examples of franchising go back to the 1700s with Benjamin Franklin, when he actually brought printing presses to local companies and charged them a royalty for access to those presses and print sets. We also have seen some other examples that people largely don't think about, but Harper Method salons developed in the late 1800s, and they opened over 500 beauty salons essentially in the US that continued to operate until around 1972. You've also got other examples like Arthur Murray dance studios that have been around for around 100 years that still operate today. And then in the 1950s, we actually saw the modern age of franchising coming to the forefront with those companies like KFC and McDonald's really gaining their prominence and have expanded all over the world. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail about the contributions to the economy. There's, like I said before, lots of reasons why this is a very important sector and space that we engage in, and the contribution to our economy is immeasurable. Let's move to the next slide. So our team also engages in the franchising space because we know that business expansion models enable our base of manufacturers and brand license holders to have greater access and global play from both traditional distribution arrangements all the way through to exceedingly more complex and lucrative greenfield investments and joint ventures. Both franchising and licensing are an excellent bridge in this capacity. They enable our partners abroad to gain experience and our core US clients to develop and open commercially where it's appropriate. Next slide. So everyone's question now is likely on where do we get started? And this is likely true for franchisors that are emerging or they're completely new to international. There are a lot of opportunities around the world. And importantly, I think it's important to know that 95% of the world's consumers actually live outside the United States. This also means that 80% of the world's purchasing power and 92% of economic growth is actually going to come from outside the United States. This becomes even more important as our clients and franchisors mature in the US market, and development growth is increasingly going to come from international markets. This also means beyond just Canada and Mexico, which logically should be most franchisors' first international markets because those markets are nearby. They're going to be easier to support and bring on board. In this regard, franchisors can use the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service as the connection point, or if you will, it can actually be your global passport to opportunities for development around the world. Our staff bring counseling and awareness to current hot sectors or opportunities from across franchise verticals. If you've actually never worked with one of our commercial teams at a U.S. embassy, this is going to open a lot of doors for your sales and development teams, and you just need to request that. Let's move to the next slide. So In order to engage our team, we do request that you actually complete a service questionnaire that's going to give our domestic account managers and our global teams enough information about your brand to better service your needs. If you don't have a domestic account manager, you can reach out to our local U.S. Export Assistance Center or reach out to me. I'll make sure that one is actually assigned to you. Typically, they are assigned in the state where your company is actually headquartered. By requesting this questionnaire, essentially what we want to do is learn a great deal more about your value proposition and the parameters around these candidates that are actually going to be more successful when we help you identify them. The better that you're able to target in on those attributes for companies that will be successful in your systems, the better our team will be able to actually identify further connections or have conversations with companies we already have communication with. So targeting in is one of the most important things that we can do with your team. We're very good at asking questions and challenging insights or maybe even some misconceptions about certain markets. So when we ask you those questions, we're doing that for a reason. For those of you who are attending today and that are more experienced with international, you likely have also received leads from our team. We have a similar engagement form that we request of our international contacts, and this provides us with a great deal more details that we can actually share when we reach out to you. And just as we work with U.S. franchisors, who are our core clients, we also support working with prospective candidates from around the world to make certain that they understand what is the franchise business model. How do they need to get organized by having a business plan and aligning budgets in order to engage more successfully with sales and development executives? We also make certain that they understand how to promote their countries as franchise destinations. We also make sure that they understand how to both vet and qualify whether a specific brand is going to be appropriate for their country and their business and would be a good cultural or corporate fit. The more we engage with prospective candidates like this around the world, the more we're seeing better deals coming to the forefront, and we can also reduce time frame to market to identify an appropriate master franchise or an area development contract. Let's move to the next slide. So you now know a little bit more about our organization and our team, and now I think it's really appropriate for you to hear more about the services that we do provide. Once we have that questionnaire, we're going to commence to reach out on your behalf with our embassies and consulate generals around the world to discuss both free and paid services. So let's talk about some of those free services right now that I think if you're not already aware of or taking advantage of, you must do so. One of the things that our team works on every year are putting together franchise webinars to highlight markets of interest that either you're already thinking about and we have a lot of brands already doing very well there, or maybe markets that are newer to the franchise forefront. We just want to highlight and bring greater awareness. Some of the programs that this year we'll focus on are going to focus around Bangladesh, Kenya, New Zealand, the Congo, and a number of others. We're also going to have a program coming up on January 23rd to actually further explore social sector franchising. If you're not aware of what social sector franchising is, please consider to join that program when you see the announcement come your direction. And I know that you'll very much enjoy hearing from the speakers we already have lined up. We also put together annually country commercial guides and as well resource guides. Those country commercial guides are important because it gives you access to consistent information updated annually that are atomized chapters on 10 different levels that essentially give you almost a SWOT analysis of what is it like to actually go into a market, try to achieve market entry. Those things that you need to explore and understand, the opportunities, the challenges, and talks about basic information like tariffs, duty rates, intellectual property rights, and the list does go on and on. Many of these reports are around 200 pages. They're free of charge. You can actually find them pretty easily by doing Google searches, country commercial guide for France. It's typically going to be the first or second hit that will come up on your search engine. country briefings are something else I like to offer up that are incredibly important. And this enables your development team to actually connect virtually or in person with our embassy franchise specialist and generally the American officer. They're going to want to hear about your value proposition and pitch to them, but in return, they're going to give you an overview of how you can go about market entry, what you might want to consider, contacts that they can introduce locally, time of the year that might be better, events in their market that you should also be present, and answer all of your questions. These are completely free of charge, and it's a great way to get started. Actually, when we start talking about paid services, I normally start with a country briefing at post, and then we weave in the services that the team locally feel will make an impact on what you're trying to get to at the other end, which is honestly a list of prospective candidates. Now, let's talk about some of those paid services that we do provide. Initial market check is the first one. This is a quick market assessment service. It's something that you may not have a great deal of awareness or knowledge in a country. You want to learn more to see if it would be worth your time. Our staff as well may not have great connections in franchising or in your vertical within the franchising space, and they want to do a little bit more work and make sure that they can actually introduce to you the correct companies or candidates, if you will. They'll do this, and typically they will profile between 5 to 8 companies that best mirror your parameters or your needs. If it looks like the service has traction, the market's appropriate, they will convert this into one of our other paid services, which can include an international partner search or gold key program. The two programs are pretty similar, but the international partner search basically enables you to have contacts shortlisted and vetted based on your unique needs on who you might be looking for locally. We focus in on capital requirements, access to real estate, industry experience, whether that might be in a quick service restaurant background, or maybe you're looking for somebody with experience in paint or coating for a certain brand. That's how we focus on that. But an international partner search will generate a list of pre-vetted candidates that you can then further engage with and speak with. The Gold Key program is very similar, but the difference is that you are expected to travel to country and have those meetings in person. And our staff will actually vet those companies. They will establish meetings for you to travel for up to 5 appointments over the course of a day in a country. And beyond that, we also provide the single company promotion, which is marrying the Gold Key program with a trade mission. Essentially, you're going to travel to market, you're going to have access to a conference facility or boardroom where you will actually promote your value proposition and pitch to a room full of companies that will also have been pre-vetted for attendance and have one-on-one meetings with them, typically in the afternoon. You'll also work with our local team on social media and access to press to bring greater awareness to your entry activities into that market. They'll also likely put together a retail tour and other meetings that will be very substantive for your development. Beyond this, we as well put together what is called the International Company Profile. It's a due diligence check. I know that all franchisors do a great deal of diligence when they're vetting candidates. And this can be something that can further augment your in-house process. We can actually go to the place of operation of that likely candidate, interview them, also interview their banking and trading references, and give you a report on what that engagement might look like going forward. Now, in terms of our fees, so our fees are based on definitions established by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And we do break that down to small, medium, and large. Most companies in the franchising industry are a medium-sized entity. The initial market check would cost $900. An international partner search is $1,400. A Gold Key program, $1,750 to $2,300, depending. And single company promotions are based on an hourly rate, and they normally will be between $5,000 to $8,000. The international company profile for a full report is $1,200. So the fees for our services are attainable. They're not exorbitant. The main thing is we want to provide you with access to contacts that will make a big difference on your development goals and requirements that next year or whenever we work with you. Let's move to the next slide. So I included this slide here really just to give you an indication of what our team's priorities are for the year. And here today, honestly, there are three things that we're most involved with focusing on this next year. That's expanding our team and our industry coverage. We're beginning to also work more with licensors in the licensing industry. We will continue to work with franchisors in providing all the bells, the whistles, the services that our clients have come to expect. But we're also doing more with licensors. We are bringing on board much more events that we'll be focusing on. We are continuing to focus on professional development. I mentioned the training that we worked with Kay Ainsley with MSA Worldwide. We're doing this with repetition, preferably every single year. We also do have an engagement strategy that's very important. This enables our team, our individual team members domestically and around the world to have a primer that helps them actually navigate working with you as a client. It gives them access to all the tools that they have access to. And importantly, it also explains how we should be working with franchisors. Franchisors typically must have an account manager who will manage your a la carte reach out to our teams around the world. If you don't do that, reach out through that process, then our international offices are going to typically return you back to your local account manager or even to myself, and we'll get you where you need to go. Something else that's included here underneath our priorities is channel development projects. We're doing a depth of engagement in certain markets this next year. Ghana is one we've spent a lot of time on the past couple of years, and we have a strategy specific to bringing greater training and awareness to the local candidates there, but also having them engage on certain events around the world, whether that be the International Franchise Expo or webinars and on from there. We'll do that level of engagement this next year in Ghana, the Congo. We're expecting Bangladesh, and given some industry activity in New Zealand, I think we will be bringing further traction there. Something I haven't mentioned yet is a resource guide. We do provide a resource guide every number of years, usually every 2 or 3 years, from our team that focuses on between 20 to 40 markets. We're currently editing right now the next installment of this resource guide. Hopefully we'll bring this to everyone in January of 2024, so just around the corner. We'll talk about activities and events on the next couple of slides, so let's move on. So this just gives you an example of some further things and engagement points with our team. Programs, we talked about webinars. Here's an example of a program we did a couple of years ago focusing on Colombia as a market of interest. I mentioned to you the program we'll do on social sector franchising coming up in January. Just mentioned to you as well the franchising industry resource guide. We will have an updated guide hopefully finished by end of January 2024. Our team also has monthly team calls where we get together and discuss activities and events and resources that can make an impact working with franchisors. We also try to invite a featured speaker each month to dive into a topic that our team may not have full understanding of. And where you have the ability to work with our team and come on board and speak with us, it's certainly a very beneficial, lucrative thing to do between both our organization and the franchise company. This next year, we're going to be trying to bring back our franchise team newsletter. We didn't really do this past year. We ideally want to do that this next year, given the number of events we'll be working with. And we really need to have further communication with our contacts all over the world, and providing a newsletter through GovDelivery gives us that ability. So if you haven't seen one of these in a long time, you'll be seeing it sometime starting in January of next year. And importantly, we have worked with the International Franchise Association over time on co-sponsored trade missions. We are ideally moving forward with final planning on a trade mission to Saudi Arabia, which is proposed for September of 2024. We've been waiting for our American officer to arrive at post in January before we take this further. We do expect that this will be able to continue, given some recent geopolitical events and wars that have been playing out in the region. This has caused us some concern, But Saudi Arabia seems to be moving forward with their development plans, with their government's focus on franchising, and there's a huge need for US brands there in market. So Jeddah, Riyadh, and another market will be the focus point for our next trade mission. We've not done one since the pandemic, and we're looking forward to getting back into this space. Let's move to the next slide. We're getting close to end of the information that I have for you today, and we'll move into Q&A. But I want to tell you about some important activities for our team. We have 2 trade event partnership programs we'll focus on this next year. For the first time, we're working with Franchise Update and supporting their multi-unit franchising conference. It will be March 19th through 22nd. It's appropriate for large scale franchisees to actually attend, and our team will be working on promoting this to those type of franchisees as well. We'll return to the International Franchise Expo end of May, early June in New York. And we have a great deal planned around the IFE this year. We've been working with MFV Expositions and ComExposium for a very long period of time. It's an incredibly important relationship to our organization, and we look forward to bringing delegations from lots of markets around the world. We think that we're going to see delegations from markets we've not seen at IFE in quite a long time coming in May. We'll do a lot of engagement with our team in terms of training. We'll also be doing training for the international prospective candidates as well. Likely we'll be reaching out to IFA members for assistance here. Some of the other team events that we're working on, we have a New Zealand Master License promotion with Franchise New Zealand that we are going to have a deadline of February 25th for, which will have editorial content and ads placed. We know that we also want to support Stuart Gurman and some of his activity in New Zealand later in the year. And this is one of the ways that we're going to bring greater focus on US brands for that market. We will also have a smaller team attending the International Franchise Association Convention in Phoenix, budget permitting with our process, February 17th through 20th. We're also going to have our annual Czech Republic franchise seminar that my colleague Veronica Novikova is going to be promoting and reaching out to brands for participation. This will be in person in April 10th this next year. And we're also going to be returning to the Global Summer Summit and the Franchise Business Network program in Denver in the summer. And we'll be helping Kevin Hine and Ackerman with building out further international activity interaction, a very useful event for our team as well every year. Let's move to the next slide. These are just some tips for companies that are franchisors and even franchisees to both do and don't. I'm not going to go into every single one because I don't think we actually have time for that. But this is the level of detail and access that you can gain by working with our team around the world. We have a lot of do's and don'ts that franchisors can learn from. I do think, importantly, please engage the U.S. and foreign commercial service as part of your strategy. Engage us early and often and communicate with our team at all the different events and with country briefings and services that you need. We're here to support your needs. We want to make sure that you get to the right candidates, that you find the right candidate from the very start, and that it's a longer-term lucrative deal that you move toward renewals with. Something I mentioned before is please do have clear parameters on those types of candidates or partners that you're looking to identify. The more clarity that you bring to the table, the easier our team will have the ability to identify and introduce you to prospective candidates that will actually move in the right direction that you need and hopefully reduce that time frame. We do recommend that you consider localization and adaptation for markets. Obviously, what has made you unique for franchising in the US or Canada may not be completely consistent or resonate in certain parts of the world. If you have certain food items that, or if there are components of beverages on your menu, for instance, if you have wine or beer in a concept, that would not be something that you'd likely be able to move forward with either in Saudi Arabia or the UAE, and you'd need to have a tea or coffee component. There are all sorts of adaptations and localization that you need to take on board. So for instance, in a market like India or Indonesia, you might have a subscription payment mechanism. That might be something you have to refine or retool for those markets, given how people are paid weekly and possibly even in cash. And that's something that you need to consider and take on board. Our local teams can actually help you understand both what you should know going in that must be adapted, and as well to sort through what prospective candidates might be telling you. Sometimes what candidates are looking for may not be completely appropriate for how you develop around the world. And we just need to sort through, is this important? Must it be done? Or is this something that would be a good thing to offer? Some of the things I would tell you don't do, and one of the big things I always say is if you're considering international development for the first time and you look at Canada, please don't make assumptions. Canada is a very distinct, separate market. It operates slightly differently than here in the US, a lot of commonalities, but not completely consistent. So please don't make assumptions. That would be true of any market, but I like to throw that one out as an example. Something else that I am seeing lately, and I think I'll end the slide on this point, is if master franchisor agreements are important to you, please consider how you structure that such that if there are geopolitical activities or events or wars that come to the forefront, consider what that might mean if you assign a master franchise exclusive rights to a territory of numerous countries. Because if you have to exit from a country and you have a master agreement signed with a company and that dissolves, then you very likely have companies operating under that master that relationship and those entities will have to reimagine and rebrand, and you no longer have your brands in play in those markets. So consider the difference between master and area development agreements and exclusivity in countries as well that are large. So a market like Canada, Australia, or India, you probably wouldn't want to grant exclusivity for the entirety of those countries. You would likely want to parcel that out. Certainly, our teams are very happy to explore that with you. And there are many in this industry that would be more than happy to share with you their case studies. So lots of do's, lots of don'ts. We have a lot more than here, and you can tap into that by engaging with our team. On this next slide, I'm going to leave you with my email address. That's one of the best ways to get in touch with me. Certainly look forward to hearing from all of you. And also, I think we have some time for questions and answers here today.
Hi, Eric. This is Jen. Thanks for providing this. It was really good. A little bit of a refresher on some things and some new stuff for me. So I appreciate the time. A quick question on the Prague seminar in April. You mentioned it was in person. Where in person in Prague, or is that at an office in the US or something? Can you clarify?
So that will be in person at our embassy office in Prague in the Czech Republic. We typically would have between 5 to 8 franchisors that would travel and present and meet with companies there at the US embassy.
Great, thank you.
Alan, I see there's a question in the chat. Do you want, I can read it. Yeah, Eric, there's a question. Can companies that are based outside the US that are looking to start offering franchise opportunities in the US use these services? For example, a company that already offers franchising in their home country.
So the services that I've detailed are specifically for US franchisors. However, you can reach out to me and we can connect you into the division that handles foreign direct investment in the US. And we do have some options out there, but a Gold Key program or some of the other paid services wouldn't be relevant in this instance.
Okay, thank you. That's actually was a great question, and thank you for that guidance. There's actually a second question, which was first, international expansion sounds exciting, but it seems like it's very important to have a strong brand in the US first. It's likely different for every company, but on average, how many units should we have here before expanding?
That's a really good question. And I would recommend that And it does depend upon the actual franchisor or the brand or the vertical. But if you're currently operating with 25 or 50 units, chances are you're really not ready for international development. Some companies are born global, depending upon their executives. But I would say if you're doing incredibly well already in the US market and you still have footprint to build out here in the US, I would recommend that you do that first before you appoint an individual to handle your international team. You really do need to have separate executives to handle domestic and international. And you should also tap into some of the resources of consultants that have actually worked with franchisors toward this endeavor, because the answer does depend on the brand, the executives involved, and you could also get a magic, wonderful opportunity of a prospective candidate that you simply cannot pass up. And if that is the case, you've got a great deal of work to do on your front. But I would say those companies who have 500 plus units, those we're getting into territory that we really should be operating in for international. Others may have a different view on that.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I'm sitting here in Toronto, and I represent a lot of U.S. brands that have expanded, obviously, to Canada. And the answer to this question is all over the place. I think, in part, it depends on what are the goals of the owners of the franchisor. A lot of people embark on international expansion as a hedge. Opportunities, economies may be performing better at any one point in time outside the U.S. than in the U.S., and it's a way to spread risk. As Eric said, there's opportunities that present themselves. I don't think there's any magic number, but I like to, who doesn't like to use McDonald's as an anecdote? But I believe there were probably no more than a dozen McDonald's in existence when Ray Kroc sold the rights to Canada to a guy named George Cohan, who moved from the US to Canada and started McDonald's Canada and ran it for 20 years, and then expanded McDonald's to Russia as well at the time. So, opportunities are what they are. They present themselves, and people go with them sometimes. But I'm not advocating to be reactive. I'm advocating use somebody like Eric and be proactive and figure out where you want to go and why you want to go there. Okay, there's one more question. I think we have time for that. And does assistance from U.S. Commercial Service provide mentorship for franchisors with logistics and operations? If not, does the IFA have something like this? So maybe others want to chime in as well. Eric?
I think I'm actually going to defer on this question to Alan, Jen, and others at IFA. Obviously, we do have some mentorship we can provide there, but I think they're better aligned to answer this question.
Sure. Take it. Thanks, Eric, and thanks for the presentation this afternoon. It's been really great. And thanks everybody for attending this webinar. We really appreciate your support in all the different ways, including attending webinars. IFA does have a number of different mentorship, friendship programs. I would say one of your best resources as an IFA member is the International Committee. The International Committee is comprised of about 40 different people, combination of consultants, suppliers, lawyers, as well as franchisors. And they're a fantastic resource to go to with questions such as this. I often send just a question along to the International Committee to allow different people and different voices to respond to it. And I think that's proved pretty effective for getting answers back about how to take on maybe an operations or a logistics problem in a certain territory, a certain country.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I'll add, I've been active in IFA, attended conventions, been a member probably 25 years or so or more. And it's a very giving community. And so even companies I find that are technically competitive with one another in a vertical, when they're in the environment of IFA, there's lots of sharing going on. And of course, there are service providers like myself, lawyers, consultants like Kay and others who do these things for a living by providing, services, including quasi-consulting services in a variety of areas. But then just within the IFA, there's a lot of people. If you attended a convention, you'll hear a lot of chatter about these things, and you can learn a lot through being involved in IFA. All right, I think we are just about done. Thanks very much, Eric. That was great. I learned something I didn't know, and I've heard you probably speak many times, so that's great. And I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot of things they didn't know. So thanks very much for attending today. We're going to have a slate of webinars in 2024, including things like franchising on the African continent, and likely on international franchising, sort of basics or 100 level international franchising. So hopefully we'll see you, if not, hopefully at the IFA convention. And thanks very much for joining us today. Alan, did you want to add anything about the convention?
I just threw it. Thanks, Larry. I just threw it in the chat. One last quick pitch. Early bird ends tomorrow. Register now, franchise.org/convention. We look forward to seeing you in February, and thank you for everything.
Yes, great. Thank you. Take care.